Welcome to another edition of Utopia News. This is your host, Wind. The date we're looking at today is July 7th, year zero. Again, it's age 92, the age of ancestry, world of legends. All right, let's dive in. So, of course, we started our target finder here, the most important part of this entire program here. We're going to do something a little bit different here today. I've already picked a few wars that we're going to look at, specifically ones that are actually already going on that have not ended yet, although believe I do have one that I wanted to revisit just to see the end result, considering the kind of battle that it seemed like it was going to be. But as I said, we're going to try something a little bit different here. We're going to take a look at the top 10 kingdoms for a moment. Now, I see everybody's pretty close together. Nobody really stands out over the others. However, this Utopian crossword, I believe they won their war, so that explains their nice shoot up here. They did extremely well in that war, and as you can see, it definitely benefited them. Looking at the top here, Unnamed Kingdom 411. I'm not sure who that is. That could very well be one of the kingdoms that just grows most of the age and typically doesn't go to war that we saw over the past couple of ages trying to make their way and maintain the top. Otherwise, a pretty consistent stream here of kingdoms who have won their wars. As you can see, the sharp increases here indicate when they actually won their wars. So it's pretty neat to see, what the top 10 are up to. Definitely a good tool for everybody to look at. Of course, you can break down, who you want to search and remove and get rid of lines. There's already, a ton of great tools available in the Intel site, especially with regards to the target finder. So, definitely take some time to explore that if you have a chance. As I said, it's definitely worth looking into. Let's go back to our current wars. Okay, let's give it a second to load here. Again, of course, we're always sorting by duration. Now that there was a lot of wars actually that started out of protection, there you can't even see all the wars. Actually, they've already kind of dropped off the target finder. But in this case, there are a couple. There's one 4-day war that we're going to look at, as well as a couple other wars that are currently ongoing. So I did actually, go ahead and pull a little bit of intel for that. So one of the wars that is currently still going on is actually at 5 days now. It's Unknown Kingdom Hostile, Please Stay Out 412 versus Kingdom 712. These kingdom names are, you have to bear with me. They're a little bit similar, so it's easy to confuse the two. Unknown Kingdom. I guess that's the way I'm going to remember it. All right, here we go. We're going to jump into the action here. I mean, looking at this war, you have to keep in mind that dragons are a factor. And in many cases, I've heard, of people slaying upwards of a 5 to even a 7 total dragons in their out of protection wars or, wars in year zero, which is very impressive. I'd say that's almost the double number, of the dragons that you would expect to see in previous ages. So definitely, considering the chat we had with Persian Cat regarding the changes to the dragons, we're definitely seeing the desired results here. Cheaper to fund dragons that are slightly easier to slay due to troop values. So it really comes down to your economy as well as potentially how much valor science. I'm not sure how much you could actually have at this time, but believe me, I've been pulling a lot of science surveys on the world, and I am not seeing a lot of science kicking around there. Even the kingdoms that are winning, of course, there's minimal science to be had. And with so many humans bouncing around, of course, those aren't exactly the best learned targets either. So enough about learning and science. Let's take a look at this war here. So I mean, I think we were looking at this yesterday, definitely, and I think the initial prediction was that if Unknown Kingdom can maintain this course, um, Red Kingdom doesn't really have a chance. However, it does look like Red Kingdom has pulled back quite a bit, so they're definitely making some progress here. Definitely, worth checking out to see what's actually going on here. Now, before we break down and look at all the provinces, let's just take a quick look at the land and net worth and honor charts respectively here. Now, see, Kingdom has pulled back in net worth. Land, they seem to be making their way back up there. But there's definitely, again, a pretty strong convergence point here, and they seem to be sticking to each other. So, whatever happened in these past few waves, Unknown Kingdom has really let their guard down and kind of opened up to Red Kingdom here. Again, looking at the numbers, they are even numbers, so there's no excuse for not having as many provinces in this war. But as you can see, Red Kingdom, honor is really the true indicator of how the war is going. I've always maintained that, especially if the kingdoms start on an even foot, which, in this war and most out of protection wars is always the case. But as you can see, somewhere around here, Red made a pretty big play, and it obviously tilted the scale of the game enough to just drag Blue Kingdom down below this, this threshold line here. And after this wave, Blue managed to grab a bit of it back, but of course, Red Kingdom is still maintaining the top position here in honor, so they're definitely doing that right in that regard. It's definitely a tight battle. I mean, like again, let's look at the land here. Again, land doesn't really mean too much, at the end of the day when it comes to during the war. Of course, it's nice to have those big fat provinces sit on top, but that's not the make or break of your war in most cases. Now, if you see here, we just follow with our mouse line here across. You can see they're well above. They've gained one landline worth on the chart, worth of land. So even though they are down, they are still up in land. So again, behind the scenes, Red Kingdom is actually having a very strong performance here. So of course, looking at changes in net worth will give us some idea of the damage being done to the provinces. On Unknown Kingdom, it looks like dwarfs and avians are getting hit, and the fairies are getting hit pretty hard. I mean, that's the bulk of their kingdom, but they've definitely taken a good amount of damage on this side. The most damage, however, goes to She-Hulk here on Red Kingdom side, taking the most net worth damage so far. Whether that's enough to stop the orc, I wouldn't think so. Just flipping over to the land here to see what's going on. I mean, without taking some intel, it's hard to say what position this avian and dwarf and this other dwarf here, the monarch, are actually what position they're in, whether they're unbreakable, whether they're counting at the top. But I think initially my outlook on this war was that Unknown Kingdom, if they could secure these positions here, these, one, two, three, keep them safe away from these attackers, maybe avian orc, these humans, this orc, this dry, this orc, they've got some work ahead of them still. But, if these provinces are unbreakable and they're just turtling out, it's only a matter of time. I mean, it really comes down to resource management and, who can control the others' defense faster. I mean, so definitely a close war. I mean, let's flip over to the yeah, that's right. I actually pulled the news on this one. Let's flip over to the Seraphim here, and we'll just take a quick look here at what's going on in this war. So this was pulled from the from the 712 side. Um, so that that's why they're on top here. So again, let's look at what's going on here. Total attacks made 158. Remember, this is only from the time of June 1st, year 0 to July 6th. That's about 30 hours, all I could grab off the news. A few failed attacks, nothing really out of the ordinary there. It looks like 712 is leading the way in uniques. In terms of attacks suffered, ambushes, some massacres. Looks like there were several massacres that happened over on this side. Definitely looking at some of the attackers, a couple untouched guys here who've just gained in acres, but as you can see, the most effective would be Deadpool, Sailor Moon, Black Panther, and of course She-Hulk and Iron Man taking the bulk of the hits. But at the end of the day, that acre exchange, She-Hulk didn't really lose that much, and in reality, these provinces have really taken a beating. And Deadpool, I don't know what's going on with Deadpool as a province, but that's a pretty low attack number um, for a province in his position. So maybe he's some sort of hybrid or TM, I guess. I mean, we can just take a look back here. sorry, wrong one. We're looking for Deadpool. Where is he? Here, we'll just do this the easy way. There he is, Deadpool. Okay, he's a fairy, so he might still be an attacker. I mean, it's very likely that this province is an attacking province. I mean, it's not entirely, surprising that Fairy being a defensive conversion elite, is having trouble getting out of the pits versus like an orc or an avian, something that has a little bit more ability to maintain themselves in war or in a chain situation. Going back to the Seraphim formatter here, we see some pretty big numbers on the 412 side. I mean, they're definitely going for gains here. They're obviously not marching too many armies in comparison to 712. So I mean, it's a pretty close war, but definitely one side is getting more marches than the other. Going to the uniques, Thor and Monkai, D. Luffy are leading the pack here. There's a lot of threes up here, which really only just tells me that maybe 712 just had their wave, and 412, when I pulled the news, I kind of caught them in the middle of their wave or kind of coming back for their next wave. But definitely, definitely this war is still going on. So, it'll be interesting to see what happens here. Looking at the land and net worth, it's a little hard to tell where they are in their waves, but it looks like red is taking a bit of a dip here since I last checked. So Unknown Kingdom must be making a move here. Whatever it is they're doing that's affecting their net worth visibly on the target finder. So here we are. I mean, here's a view of 712's land just going down a little bit. But again, as you can see, that's not really, they're only minus 120 basically. Maybe there'll be a little bit more shortly, but really not much land lost. Raises three, not many raises. Again, lots of massacres on this side. So they're definitely doing some TM control. How much damage they're actually doing, or whether that's even their reason that they're doing it, is hard to say. One thing I wanted to point out is how many aid packets are actually going back and forth. That's a significant amount of aid packets going back and forth on this kingdom. Again, this is 712. So again, looking at their aid packets here, you know, just to give you some idea, that's a lot of aid packets going back and forth. They're all going to, looks like, they're provinces that are taking damage. Maybe they're trying to mitigate by sending soldiers over to help with that desertion. Because, so that's the best way to deal with that. In terms of dragons, I don't think I pulled up any dragons here. Yeah, there's no. So this is maybe they've already had their dragons and they're kind of done with the dragons. So it'll definitely be interesting to see if Kingdom can pull this back and actually win this war. They're definitely putting up one heck of a fight. I mean, if you look at the numbers down here, net worth is pretty even on both sides. One side's slightly down on acres, but again higher in honor. So I mean, I kind of, this indicator here is kind of what I generally go by in terms of who the game thinks is going to win the war. I kind of really haven't really quantified as what this actually is, but I found that there is some correlation between who's actually winning or who wins the war, and these numbers here. I'll leave that to everyone's experimentation, or possibly if someone from Muga wants to explain what those numbers actually mean. My theory is that it has something to do with the status of the war. So again, moving on here, we did a little bit of research on that war. This is a nice war. Dyslexic Defenders, and they didn't spell their name right, of course, because they're dyslexic, versus Unnamed Kingdom. Now, again, this is just one of the wars that's currently going on in the world. Let's just take a look at their kingdom here. Let's see if I can even spell. Oops. See if I can even spell dyslexic. No, I can't because I'm dyslexic as well. Let's see. Oh, that's because they didn't even spell it that way. I'm just saying it that way. So this is a nice 4-day war. I mean, it's a really tight battle, as you can see down here. The numbers aren't too far off. I mean, that's not a huge gap that they're dealing with there. Looking at the target finder again, you look at the land. They're definitely a tough battle going back and forth. I did pull the news on this one as well. But as you can see, again, as we talked about before, dyslexic came in on top with with more land going into the war. And it's been a tough battle ever since. You can see a lot of up and down in terms of the land here. Definitely some nice movement going on here. Whatever is going on, they are doing some nice controlled chains. Flipping over to the net worth side, wow, this is a few of the other wars we've seen. A lot of kingdoms kind of just growing together, um, literally growing together. In this case, these two definitely did grow quite a bit in terms of net worth, but as you can see, it's kind of like declining now. Every successive wave, unnamed kingdom is really taking a chunk out of dyslectic defenders, and they're pulling them down with them. However, they're taking enough damage themselves that they can't seem to rise above the blue team here. So it's definitely a hard fought war. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if Unnamed Kingdom walked away from this, but in this current state of affairs, it looks like Dyslectic defenders managed to get a pretty strong grasp on what's going on here in this war. I mean, taking a quick look at the land, Unnamed Kingdom has quite a few provinces under 300 acres, but so does Dyslectic Defenders. I mean, they're pretty evenly matched, it seems. This is, going to come down to maybe a few mistakes on one side or the other. Looks like there was some nice chaining that happened over here. Some of these guys lost some decent amount of acres here. I mean, this could very well just be a best gain scenario on focused targets. If you take a look, kind of to see who's at the top here, we got an avian and a human, but definitely you see this is why the unnamed kingdom isn't really able to gain a net worth advantage because they've got this big human and dwarf and this fairy on top here, which seem to be just kind of sitting, really high up there. And with prolonged damage to attackers, these guys won't even be in net worth range, or their attackers won't even have enough offense to hit them very shortly. But this is kind of what's going on and why they've been able to maintain their run to the top here. But as you can see, it looks like red is just finishing up or doing their wave right now. However, they have been, kind of going in and out. This is a strong wave here. This is a weaker wave, slightly stronger wave going into what potentially looking like a weaker wave. So definitely not a good outlook for Unnamed Kingdom, unless they have some sort of ace up their sleeve or they are that low on defense. It's definitely, I'm not saying give up, but it's definitely a hard fought battle because looking at the honor here, they're really dominating the honor. Again, kingdoms going into the war almost average, like equal, just like the rest of the world. Unnamed kingdom sitting on top here, doing quite well, maintaining the honor until something happens here. Maybe there's some dragons in here that we don't know about, but they seem to pull back at this point. I mean, this is part of their wave, so of course they're gaining honor, while the blue team loses honor. But that will quickly change when the blue team gets their next wave. So just taking a quick look at the formatted data here. Seraphim, it's a great website. If you just go to Google and type in Seraphim Formatter, it's usually the first thing on it. It gives you these nice formatted things. You just put this in here, unclick this so it calculates some raises properly, because this thing hasn't been updated in a long time, but it's just a data interpreter. I mean, all it's doing is adding up all the attacks to create these nice little summaries and graphs that you've seen here. Here's the link right here. I definitely recommend everybody use it, especially if you're a monarch. Definitely helps you keep get a summary of things, or it's nice to have at the end of the war. If you have a full war summary of the entire war, you can see exactly what happened. It's a very nice little feature. Thanks to whoever made it. I don't even know, it's been around for so long. Okay, back to the war here. We're looking at traditional marches. Again, I believe this is taken from 310's perspective. I think I did see a dragon in here as well. So going up here, geez, again, there's a lot of stuff going on in this war. Yeah, so this was taken on 310 from their perspective, so their information is going to be on the top. So they suffered 170 attacks versus 176 that they made. So again, a pretty tight war. Traditional March numbers pretty close. Unique numbers almost the same. A 10 off. That's actually, I'm wondering kind of what's going on there. probably just some lazy provinces. But looking at some of these numbers, like wow, again, lazy provinces. This is definitely like one of the least lazy provinces out of the entire bunch here. 12 attacks out of one, or they're just managing generals good. I mean, again, 12, 12, 10, 12, 12. Those are a good amount of armies marching versus, the lower numbers here. 8's still a good number, 7 possibly still a good number, but 4, 5, and 6, those must be the ones maybe they got stuck home, or maybe they're hybrids. They can't march as many armies as the pure attackers. Maybe they had more defensive numbers and they were targeted for that reason. Um, it depends on your strategy. But again, looking at 710, look at some of these numbers: 16 attacks, 16 attacks. But again, we're getting to lower numbers like 8s and 7s and 4s. Now, again, remember, we are in between waves, but looking at the uniques kind of gives it away here. It's very likely, just looking at this, that possibly some of these 310 guys missed their wave or couldn't attack, or they have yet to attack. But definitely there's some 3s up here, but again, mostly 4s and 3s here, probably on their attacker core. Maybe these are their hybrids down here, or slower attackers that can't attack as quickly. It's hard to say without having all the data side by side, but it doesn't look like they have too many avians, so it's mostly humans. So slow attackers are probably these dryads here, or someone else that doesn't get a speed buff. But again, we can kind of look at that here. Whoever, kind of, I think those are probably the ones that took the least amount of attacks. So just looking at it here, Bonnie explosions. Yeah, see they took. He's one of the ones that took most of the attacks. Again, see this war, there's about half the aid packets sent. So if we go back here and we just type in aid, we can kind of see, there's some interesting stuff going on here. Definitely a lot of aid going back and forth. Nothing like the last war though, um, except for right here, probably doing the same thing, trying to pump soldiers in to avoid desertion, or possibly to build buildings. Without full intel of these kingdoms, it's hard to say. I'm not sure if there was a dragon here, but yes, as you can see, there's quite a few dragons going on, or references in here. So we began a dragon, began ravaging the lands. They began another dragon, slain the dragon. Okay, they've already got one. Emerald dragon has begun ravaging our lands. They started another dragon. Well, this is a lot of dragons here. And the Antichrist has completed a dragon. Um, this is 17 references to dragons here. I might even have to keep these recorded down. Slain another dragon. And then here we go again. Emerald dragons. Holy cow. Holy emerald dragons. Wow. They're just back-to-back emerald dragons here. Slain the emerald dragon. Antichrist has completed the dragon. Our kingdom has begun the dragon. Wow, there is a lot of dragons going back and forth in this war. So definitely, this is one of those wars where the dragons are really, really being shown. Sorry, let's go back to the correct war. There's a lot of dragons in this war, and it's not something that you could see from here, but that would definitely explain the net worth loss on both sides, because if they're constantly funding dragons to go back and forth, troops are consistently taking damage, net worth loss on both sides. That's definitely the explanation for this curve here into the lower net worths for both of these contenders. Definitely a tough war. Would want to see who comes out on top. War to watch for sure. This is be an interesting one. These two kingdoms, definitely both kingdoms to be aware of in the warring scene. So definitely check that out. Here we go. Let's move on to the next war here. Get a Job versus Chaos Never Ending. Now you see Chaos Never Ending is still dominating here, but Get a Job seems to be pulling back a little bit of land. Let's flip over to the net worth side of things. Again, Chaos seems to be dominating, but Get a Job seems to be pulling back a tiny bit. They're closing that net worth gap a little bit. Not giving Chaos as much of a lead as they saw before. However, they are short one province, as indicated down here. Now, a quick look at the land. Not too much to cry home about here. No one's really taken too much damage. Again, no one really in the 100-acre zone or in the really, really low 200s. So both sides doing are pretty healthy in that regard. Again, Chaos, again, they're the bigger kingdom in this situation, so currently maintaining the lead slightly. If we take a quick look at net worth per acres here, they got some pretty good saturations on Chaos again and the extra player. So, I think this is definitely Chaos's war to win. If Get a Job can pull this back and take this win, more power to them. They're definitely in a good position either way in terms of net worth and land, I believe. So, no matter how they decide to finish this war, they're still above land right now. So, it's not really too much of an impact. They get their 4-day ceasefire. And again, looking at the honor is the real indicator of what's going on in the war. They're pretty neck and neck the whole time. There's only a few spots here where they kind of gone back and forth. Currently, Blues on the top end cycle, but we'll see what it looks like after this next wave. So great war so far, guys. Keep up the good work. It'll be awesome to see how this one turns out. Let's go on to the next war here. This is one I was talking about earlier, ended recently. It was Monsters versus On the Road again. I believe I had called a win for this Monster side, but just to give you some idea of how hard these kingdoms are fighting. They were two provinces down. So, really once Monsters kind of got them in that advantageous position, as you can see here, they got some really low province acreage numbers here versus, they've got their biggest province is 579, whereas 579 over here, basically almost at the bottom. So, this is why Monsters won the wars. They managed to take the acres and sustain up at the top of the acres, probably with some higher defenses. I mean, look at these guys, undead. So, maybe they're afraid to attack the undead. Avian, dwarf, dryad, undead, avian, undead, versus the orcs and fairies and dwarfs and dryads that are at the top. Um, you know, so it's definitely again was Monsters War to lose in that regard, but on the road again, definitely put up a good fight. So good on them for taking that war, two provinces down. Let's take a look here. Monster Tomatoes versus Can't Get It Right. Take a look at this land. Okay, so Can't Get It Right was a smaller kingdom going into the war, and Monster Tomatoes, the bigger one, definitely. It looks like they've maintained this trend of staying in the lead here. That's a pretty significant land lead on Monster Tomatoes. Again, they're both equal in terms of counts, so there's definitely no issues there. Net worth wise, though, Can't Get It Right. Definitely can't get it right this time upon the second review. It seems like they're bleeding net worth even more. Definitely Monster Tomatoes walking away with this war at this time. Let's take a look at the honor to see what kind of activities going on. Definitely a tight war. See, like, they can't get it right. Seems like, they were in a great position, but maybe that was just a false position that seems better than it actually was. As you can see, they did take some advantage here. Maybe they took out a couple provinces or took out a TM possibly, but Monster Tomato seems to just be pulling that honor right back. So not too much time before we might see them on top. Quick look at the land here, though. Um, okay, interesting. Okay, on Monster Tomatoes, see they got one province under 100 acres, and these guys lost a pretty significant amount of acres. So these orcs and this undead, possibly the honor loss here, is simply just those provinces being attacked because those some pretty good gains. They must have had some pretty good gains when they attacked these provinces. Again, it looks like it's a lot of orcs on this side, orcs on both sides really, but orcs definitely help with those gains. Okay, let's see. That's pretty nice numbers actually. Looking at the change of net worth here, definitely more damage on Can't Get It Right side. I mean, this could just very well be Monster Tomatoes wave, which definitely looks like it is. So they've already taken damage. They're returning fire now, so they possibly got some more attacks left in this. Time will tell, but definitely an interesting war to have witnessed. Again, this is two Monster Tomatoes is a kingdom that has been seen before. They do like to go to war, so you can expect to see them going to war a lot more in the future. Can't get it right. I think one thing you can't get right is pick a good day when you want your ceasefire to end. I'd recommend this evening or or sorry, start or tomorrow morning. That way you get a nice break until during the week to start fresh on the weekend. But I mean, it's entirely up to you. From my point of view, it definitely looks like this war could come to a close. You're definitely in the lead, not necessarily giving away the acres. However, you are below the threshold of where you started the war, so now might be a good time to withdraw unless you're making a good swing back up to the top for those extra acres. 34 hours, you've still got some time to go, but definitely, you got to turn something around real quick because Monster Tomatoes is just harvesting those acres, and they're not going to leave you out with anything left. Last thing you want to do is have to spend your entire ceasefire exploring. That can be very costly and time consuming, in terms of taking away from science and wizard per acre production. So let's take a look at the last war here. We got Unnamed Kingdom versus Lord of the Rings. Again, these are all wars that we looked at briefly yesterday. Both kingdoms started off pretty even in terms of land, but of course, Unnamed Kingdom looks like they just had their wave, so they've taken off a little bit, whereas they dropped Lord of the Rings a tiny bit. So Lord of the Rings will get their wave and pull this back down a little bit, I suspect. Looking at the net worth side of things, looks like it's getting a little bit slow. Looking at the network side of things, it kind of tells us the same story. They're kind of looks like they may have just had a wave shortly, so they're kind of pulling away at the top. Again, another war, again, only at the 31 hour point. But from, this perspective, generally when you see so much separation in between the waves and not being able to pull back, like those nice conversion lines of criss and cross that you see, those are the really tight wars and the really strong back and forth wars. It's definitely not to say that they're not fighting hard, but there's definitely a stronger measure of coordination in wars where you see those convergence and divergence lines constantly, wave over wave, are just plainly clear. There'll be plenty more wars where we can examine that in the future. They do happen very often, and it does take a good amount of planning and waving, good waves to get that right. So again, you see on the honor side of things, Lord of the Rings kind of has made a little bit of a comeback here in terms of honor, as they were, losing a good amount, probably until their most recent wave where they managed to bring it back. However, Unnamed Kingdom still sitting on the top there, so definitely a danger zone for Lord of the Rings. They're not in the greatest position right now. Again, this could go to anyone. I don't want to discourage anybody. Just looking at the land, however, quickly, Unnamed Kingdom looks like they suffered a fair bit of damage on several of their provinces. Over 1,000 acres I can see there. However, looking at the damage on this side, just as much acres probably has been taken, not as many actually, but it's a pretty significant amount of damage on this side as well. Actually, the acres are probably fairly even on this chart here, but again, looking at the smallest and biggest provinces, sure they have one province under 200 acres, but it is an undead at a very high net worth, relative to these halflings still. So there's lots of offense power still sitting on there versus their bottom end here. They've got this guy. This guy's a dwarf, so he's probably going to maintain his net worth fairly well. But looks like he was just taken down. So a lot of these provinces are probably going to bleed a little bit before they finally settle. Same with this human. Humans rely on a lot of science buffs, so making them small, and when they lose their buffs and all their bonuses and can't cast spells anymore, um, because versus not being attacked and having peasants and being able to cast their spells, it really sets them back. But as you can see, this human has a very high net worth breaker still, and so does this dwarf. So uh, they've got a lot of armies still left sitting on those provinces. Just looking at the flip side of things, Unnamed Kingdom definitely has the lead in terms of acres, as is obvious by the charts, of course, and in net worth currently, as they seem to be doing, a good amount of damage. Whether or not it's the right type of damage remains to be seen. There is still lots of time in this war. Again, this is only a 31-hour war, so best of luck to everyone in the war. I hope that you guys have a nice, hard-fought war, and both sides have a good time because that's what this is all about at the end of the day. So definitely.